Hey, Ricardo here from Uplifted Consulting. Today we're going to see how to extract data for every website for automation purposes. So we're going to see three different levels of difficulty, from public-facing API all the way till hidden APIs with cookie authorization, which is the most difficult method and something that you don't see a lot of people talk about enough. So let's start off with the public-facing API, which is the simplest one. So an example of public-facing API is something that is well documented within the internet. So if you search a specific tool and you search for their API documentation, you can find a file like the following, where you can see all the different API calls that you can do, all the different things that you can perform within the tool, so that in that way you can actually perform some action directly to either an automation platform or third-party software to do whatever you need. So in this instance, so what we will look at SmartLead AI API. So here, everything is well documented, and there are a lot of different endpoints. And the process for working with a public-facing API is pretty simple. First off, we find the documentation, like the following documentation. We read the authentication part, so we get an understanding of how to actually authenticate different things within the platform. Some APIs use a header, some others use query strings. In this case, this API uses a query string. And then we look for the specific endpoint that we want to look at. So for example, let's say we want to get campaign by ID, and we use this endpoint. So an example here, by going within make, is the endpoint like the following, where here we already created the credential within make, so we have our credentials secured. And then here we just call the URL with the right method. We make sure to pass the response, and then by running that, we get all the data. So this is great. This is very good. And if there's a well-documented API, you can get a lot out of that, and you can do a lot out of that. The problem, however, is when you need to perform specific actions which are not available within an API. So let's say, for example, we want to use this API endpoint here, which is called Fetch Campaign Mailbox Stats, which is a fairly new API that is available within SmartLead, and we want to use that. So let me just copy this campaign ID and then just change it back over here so that we can try this out. So when trying this out, for example, we see that this API is under maintenance and is not available. So the second method that I'm about to show you especially addresses this problem. So we look for the information within the actual platform, and then we find a way to send this information in this tool. So in this instance, what we want to have this mailbox stats. So get mailbox stats. So as you see right now, this is not working. So what we will do is we will go within the campaign, within the direct campaign, and find a way to actually get this information from the front end. Because what usually happens is that when you're looking at the website has two different parts. They have a backend and they have a front end. Usually they get the backend is where all the information is stored, and what happens is there are some codes which are performed to the backend, similar to API calls, where the data is retrieved, and then you can use the data directly in the front end, and the front end just shows the data to you. So in this instance, what do we need to do? Our end goal is find these API calls, which we don't see right away, but we can see using the developer tool. So what do we do right now is we press Ctrl Option I to open the developer console. So this is the developer console. Don't get scared by the developer console. There are a lot of functionalities here, but we will mainly look at one specific functionality, which is within the network tab. By the way, in order to get to use this, you need to be at least somewhat familiar with APIs and calling APIs. What are headers, what are API endpoints, what are query parameters, and those kind of information. So here we will use the network tab, and what we can do is we can click on preserve log and disable cache, and then basically what we can do over here is we can reload the page. Once we reload the page, there are a lot of different calls that happen in the background here. We are mainly looking to the fetch XHR calls. And here we can see that there are a bunch of different calls. The one that are the most interesting for us are the GraphQL calls. So here there are four different parts which we can look at. There's the header. So the header is describing the actual API call. So here, for example, what they are doing here is they are calling this API with specific headers. Here they are using an authorization header. This is the actual authorization. And this is called directly from the backend. The payload is the data that is being called. So if we look over here, for example, they mentioned the operation name. So the operation name here is get campaign analytics by ID. And here, what you need to do is you need to perform some inference and get a little bit of an understanding of what that could mean. So the meaning is pretty straightforward here. What I suppose this operation does is gets analytics data regarding the campaign by using the campaign ID, for example. So this is the actual operations data, and this is an operation that is not in the usual API format, which is a REST format, but in a GraphQL format, which is another kind of API that you can use. So if we look at response over here, we can see that the data that is available within this specific API endpoint. So if I look at this data, for example, here I see dates, and then I see send count, bounce count, open count, and click count. And from what I'm reading over here, it seems that this data is the actual data that is populating the graph that is present over here, for example. So here, for example, I see the 24th, and by looking over here, we have 125 sent, 28 open, 22 clicks, 27 bounced. So if we look at the information over here, it seems that this is the right call. So as you can see here, we have this data available over here. And the thing that we can do is we can perform the same API endpoint, not through the browser, but through another tool such as make.com in order to get the actual data here. So first off, the first goal is to go here to the payload tab and search for what we are looking for. We were looking for the email account performance. So what I know here is that if we press this, we will likely have another additional endpoint. So as you can see over here, we have a couple of additional endpoints. that is called get email account status by campaign ID. And if I go over here, I can see the actual campaign status. So this is the actual endpoint that I will need. And right now, what we need to do is we need to go within make.com and call the same API endpoint. So let's start creating that. And let's make a request. This will be hidden API with authorization. By authorization here, I mean that there's authorization that is specific to your browser or specific to your account that is used over here, which is different from the API key. So let's get all the information that we need to. So we get the GraphQL request URL. The method here was post. And then probably the most important information here, keep in mind here we have response headers. So what we got in the response and request. We always need to look at the request. So the two ones that here are needed are authorization. So we will use authorization here as a header, authorization here. We will copy the header over here. So let's copy this. And then we will create an additional header, which is called user agent. And we use user agent so that the moment we perform an API call, it seems like the actual browser created that API call. So this is the actual, this is the reference of what is the kind of device that performed the API call. So in some instances, it's always better to use this user agent. So it seems that this was performed through the actual browser, but instead this is not done through the actual browser. So here we are taking these two kinds of information, and then another part here is the body type. So as you saw here, the payload, this is pretty different from what we are used to in regards to API endpoints and the way API endpoints are created, because this is a GraphQL API. So GraphQL is usually composed of two parts, which is the query, which is this initial part over here, and then the variables. So the query is the actual, query that gets the right information, and that the variables instead is where we need to change the information. So here, for example, variables that we have over here is the campaign ID. But what we can do is we can change this campaign ID and use another campaign ID as an example to get information from other campaigns. So what we need to do in order to use that is we need to make sure that those are converted to JSON format in order to be used within the code over here. So what we do here, we use this website, which is called datafetcher.com, and they have a GraphQL to JSON converter. So what you do is you copy the GraphQL query as I showed, and then you paste the query over here, and you also need to paste the variables down there. So those are the variables. We copy the variables over there, and here we copy this. So what we do over here is we can select a content type. The content type here could be two different content types. It could either be application/JSON or application/GraphQL. Again, that is something that we can verify over here within the header if present. So this is usually called the content type. So here is mentioned application.json. So we can use this application.json over here. Okay, so now we created the actual API call. keep in mind that here we have the campaign ID. This is a fixed variable at the moment, but if we wanted to, we can have this dynamic, for example. And other important thing here is that we are using two different things for offset and limit. Those are not actually needed, and we can remove those if we wanted to. Now we created the authorization here. We created everything, and let's run this and let's see if everything works correctly. So we got a status code of 200, and if we look into data, we see data results, and then if we look over here, we see that we have all sort of, we have all the data available over here and used. So this is really, really powerful, because if there's something that is not available within the API, we can use this in order to get that kind of data. Now the second point is a little bit more difficult, and it's using another kind of formatting, which depends from side to side. So let's see this other one. So what we saw right now so far is this hidden API with authorization. The authorization is something that is fixed, and we don't need to change anything. The other instance is when the authorization is not fixed and it's something like a cookie, for example, that we need to use. So the example here, the perfect example, is actually Loom, because Loom has this sort of authorization. And keep in mind, different kind of website have different kinds of working. So you will find a website that have authorization, website that have cookies, and stuff like that. So an example here is Loom, and what we will do is we will get started and see the information within Loom. So here, as you can see, we also have these GraphQL parts, and if we look at the payload, here we see, for example, things such as different operations which are performed all at the same time. So here, what we would like to have, for example, is we would like to get all the looms at the same time. So probably, again, the thing that we will look at it will be only this GraphQL. So let's look at here, and here it seems that there's an operation called getLooms. So this could probably be the one that is the most interesting for us. So if we go to response over here and we go down here, as you can see, these getLooms have all sort of data available over here that we can look and that we can work. So here, for example, is the previous video that I created, and then there are also other previous videos that I created, and so on. So let's try to get an understanding of how these actually work and what are the type of requests over here. So this is working pretty differently compared to the other one, because the other one was using an authorization, so it's easier for us to get the authorization. In this instance, this is using a cookie. So the cookie always changes, and I mean, not always, not every time, but every time you clear the cache or do something, the cookie is not the same anymore. So you need to find a way to actually save the cookie and get the cookie out, so that either once per week or once per day, this is updated. In order to do that, the best way is to actually use a Chrome extension. Now, I haven't found an actual Chrome extension that does that, so let me show you a Chrome extension that I developed. And the concept is pretty simple here. The Chrome extension here is called Cookie Finder, and what it basically does is it sends a cookie directly to an Airtable base. So here, for example, what I do is I search the cookie, it gets all the cookies that are present, and then uses that and sends that to an Airtable base. So if I go to Airtable, to the testing base, as you can see here, I created a website and this created my cookie that I can use. So what I can do over here in order to work on this hidden API is the following. So let me create a module where, for example, I search for the cookie. So let me search Airtable, and I search for the dev base. And then I search table 1, and for example, I search website equal to and we copy this website because in this way it's easier to find the actual information. So in this way here we have the cookie, and we have the cookie available to another platform and sending that to another platform. What I will do also in this video is I will send over the Chrome extension that I created so that you can get access to that and you can use that. You can use that. The Chrome extension, personally, I created this Chrome extension using ChatGPT. So everything is created directly through ChatGPT, and it's pretty easy and simple to use. And this allows you to update the cookie every now and then, both on the Airtable as well as on the Chrome backend. So this is, as I mentioned, a very advanced way of getting the actual hidden API from Loom, but this is what we need to use some of the times. So let's get this, and let's get the cookie, for example. So here we will need to have the cookie. We will change this to cookies, and let's get all the data that we need to. So GraphQL, for example, from Bloom, we got the cookie, and then we can do the same thing as what we did over here, for example. So we go to payload and copy the operation over here and copy the variables also so that we can use that. Okay, copied that, added that over here, and then we click on the OK. So let me, let's try to run this and let's see if this works correctly. So here, as you can see, this run correctly. We got a status code data, and then we can look at the videos. And if we look over here, we can check all the videos, and the videos have a title as well as a lot of different information that we can use over here to other areas. So that, for example, if we want to get our own looms, or we want to get our looms and filter those out for a specific in a specific way, we can do that using this this API for using the cookie. Keep in mind the part related to the extension. It's something that it's overlooked but pretty important. So it's important that you have a place to store the extension. Down below you can find a link where there will be the extension as well as a tutorial on how to actually install that. That's pretty simple, but I will also add that to GitHub, and you can use that. Other than that, this showed these 3 different ways Hope you get some value out of that. Hope you learn some new things on how to use the hidden APIs, both with authorization as well as with cookie authorization. And I'll catch you on in the next video for automation. Also, if you want to automate different things, be sure to reach out and we can discuss that in the future. Bye-bye.